For this course, we're going to be looking at mostly 3 different ways to solve the quadratic equations through factoring, finding the roots, and the quadratic formula. The first method you've learned was factoring. Factoring is great when you have a quadratic equation that can be easily factored into 2 binomials. So here we have one example. We can factor that into the binomial x plus 2 times x plus 3 equals 0. Using our zero product property, we can then set each product equal to 0 and solve for x. So in this situation, we'd have x equals -2 or x equals -3. This is probably going to be one of your favorite methods. It requires just a knowledge of basic factoring of quadratics, and it will probably be the most efficient for most of you. Our next is roots. Solving quadratic equations with roots requires your quadratic equation to not have a b value. So if you think about our quadratic equation here, x squared plus 3x plus 9. In this case, we could not use roots here because we have this b value and it wouldn't work. So if we're looking for an equation that can be solved using roots, something similar to x squared minus 81 equals 0. Notice we have no b value. So in this situation, we actually don't want our equation equal 0. We add 81 to both sides, and we are left with x squared equals 81. We now take the square root of both sides, roots, and we're left with x equals plus or minus 9. Don't forget, when we're taking the square root of a value, we have to think about both the positive and the negative roots here. So this is one way to solve a quadratic equation. Please use this method when you have no b value. It will make your life so much easier and solving the quadratic equation a lot faster. Our third method of solving quadratic equations is the quadratic formula. You're going to use this as a last resort, mostly because it is very time consuming to use, and it requires your equation to be set equal to 0. So that it must be set equal to 0 here. So in order to use the quadratic formula, obviously you have to have your quadratic equation set up in standard form, where a is the coefficient of x squared, b is the coefficient of x, and then c is the constant value. You're going to take those numbers and plug it in to the quadratic formula. It should result in 2 answers if the equation can be solved. Again, quadratic formula is probably your last result in this situation, just because it is time consuming and you have to have your equation equal to 0. I just wanted to let you know about 2 final ways to solve quadratic equations. One is graphing. Obviously, graphing is not going to be the most conducive unless you're carrying your graphing calculator with you everywhere. And the same reason we don't solve things by graphing often. It requires graph paper and our graphs to be 100% accurate in order to get an accurate response. Completing the square is another method that your Algebra 2 teachers will teach you. So that is solving quadratic equations kind of summed up, and your job now is to figure out which method is going to work best for you in which situation.